because of the nature of this film, Jim and I and the chat are going to be having a frank discussion about sex and sexuality. Sexual assault as a subject will most likely come up. Female genital mutilation will come up. Sexual assault will come up. The sex trade will come up. So if that is not your jam, and totally understandable if it isn't, no judgment here, this would be your opportunity to check out before we get into the movie and into the spoiler zone. Anyway, with that, yeah, let's do this. All right, where the heck was I? Let's bring up the show notes. All right. Yes, Jim and Rob, welcome to another night of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the live video podcast for people who want a deeper conversation about the films we watch today. Tonight, Jim and I are going to discuss Yorgos Lanthimos' adaptation of Alistair Gray's modern take on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the recently released Poor Things, starring Emma Stone. And now, let's give a big welcome, a big internet welcome, a big YouTube welcome to our man with the most, my co-host, my borscht bro, Winnipeg's very own, Mr. Jim Chaboyko.
Hi, folks. Oh, I get the crowd and the air horn. I'm unmuted.
And you're even unmuted.
Woo!
Only the best for you, Mr. Chaboyko.
Starting 2024 off well.
We are.
I have a voice.
A voice. Look at this. Couple of middle-aged white men. Finally, we too get
Finally, we can express ourselves in this age of, yeah.
All right. Jim, let's get right into the flick at hand. Of course, we are talking about Poor Things. Now, here's my log line. Our hero, the young girl/woman, Bella Baxter, must escape the home of her overprotective father, Godwin, not to mention her betrothed, the young Max McCandless, to see the world and explore her desire. Jim, here's the first question before we get into our spoiler zone, and this is for you, for anyone in the chat. Keep this in mind. At the end of the show, I think we want to try and answer, what is she questing for? What is her desire? What is the nature of her desire? And with that out of the way, I think it's time to jump into the spoiler zone. Oh my goodness, Jim, I'm just totally firing on all our sound effects and stuff.
2024, baby.
2024. Jim, you and I, we did a see it and skip it. I did get it edited, and it is live now on the channel. I'll put a link to it here. Of course, there is a link in the description, so we don't need to do that. We can just jump right into this flick. Let me ask you this first. Where am I? Oh my goodness. I got to refer to my notes. Who do you think Lanthimos and Stone, for some reason, I cannot think of this film without thinking of the star. Mm-hmm. Who do you think they wanted? Who do you think they made this movie for?
Oof. That's a good question. You know, like with any artist, they always say to, you know, the specific leads to the general. So you write something that you think applies only to you, and it turns out that there's millions of others that can understand what you're talking about. But but having said that, I guess it's self-creation is sort of a where we're taught that you only sort of become yourself in your early teens and your 20s, and sort of all those coming of age movies. But I think it's a constant process. So it could be that it just talks to everyone about, the process of being alive and being an explorer and questioning and wondering and that kind of thing. I know that sounds fairly general, but I can't think of it as anything more specific than that. That's a good question. I was there's somebody else that I just watched another review of, and they said this is basically Barbie, which I thought was an interesting point. I don't want that to take over, but this is just a different version of Barbie, which I thought, well, that's kind of it's a separate debate, of course, but yeah.
I mean, yes, as a woman who goes out, leaves her world and goes on an adventure, sure.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I agreed with it, but
reductive sense.
yes, yeah. But yeah, no, I think it would. I think it has just to do with being human, really, being sort of alive and awake and questioning and wondering and that kind of thing. It's not necessarily about women or young women or that kind of thing, or people who are necessarily oppressed that have to break out of it. It's just about anybody who's sort of currently, has a bit of a question or two about life.
I'm glad I asked you that question. I'm glad I didn't telegraph my thoughts on it.
Sure.
You've given. I now am going to open my idea of it a little because of you. And thank you very much for that, Jim. I really did look at it as aimed at women because I think one of its themes, one of the questions it's trying to answer is how does a woman become herself with all these men minding her business?
Mm.
And so I think it really is, I think maybe aimed at women isn't enough, though. That's too reductive. It stars a woman going through this, but yeah, you're a young man. You can get something. I got a lot out of it, and I'm in my 50s.
Yeah,
so
me too.
I did not feel like I was just listening in on the, let's say, that meta conversation that every film kind of carries on with the audience. Unlike women talking where it's like, yeah, I'm supposed to just listen. This is a one-way conversation. Coming back to that, though, what is this movie saying to us?
Yeah. Again, well, first of all, just about the women aspect, I noticed one of the interesting things about it is the movie poster that we have at the side of the screen. If you notice, it's Emma Stone, writ large. And then what's coming out of her right there, there's several men arrayed on that gray kind of stone expanse in front of her. And also the movie poster has her and then about 6 other men's names. So I think, to say that it's from a book written by a man and a movie directed by a man with a lot of men in it. So, I'm always a little bit cautious there about sort of ascribing something totally to women. But, having said that, Emma Stone kind of totally owns this.
Well, Jim, actually, I want to push back a little there.
Certainly I'm not saying it's not that they can't comment. I just thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, I guess what I'm reacting to is that it's this woman and some guys, and certainly if you look at who stars in it, according to Wikipedia, font of probity, you would think that's what it is. It's a woman and her moving through life with a bunch of men. until she gets out of the house.
Yes.
So the second half of the movie is her having deeper and deeper relationships with this series of women. And her and her relationships with them kind of take over at least the second half of the second act, and into the third. And they become important characters in the third, even including her own alter ego, Victoria Billingham.
I can look it up.
Yeah.
Blessington.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And her husband, the general.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, there is that theme of men trying to control her and control what she wants, control her desire, however it manifests itself. But there's also these women who cheerlead, help her explore her desire. So I think it's more than just her in conflict with men, because she's also like, some of the things any kind of parent will do is a civilizing behavior on children. I'm sure you have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and I'm sure there are times when it's like, I know your desire is to eat candy all day, but as the responsible adult.
Yes. I'll eat it for you. No, but yeah, and I can see that point too. And I would suggest that that's more a fault of marketing than anything, because those other characters do come up in the second half, including Martha, who I thought was a really interesting character, an older German woman that she meets on board a ship, played by Hannah Shigula, who's famous for her work. She's 80 now. She just turned 80 on Christmas, but she's famous for her work with Rainer Werner Fassbinder. It was a big talent. I mean, is still currently a talent, but she sort of did a lot of big movies in the 80s, 90s, and that sort of thing. So
and a big sex symbol.
Yes, yeah,
which I think kind of comes up because they talk about her sex life.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they do. And that it doesn't end. Like, she's still seen as, and Bella still asks her about her sex life, even though she is an older woman, so as not to imply
assumed to no longer have desire.
Yeah. You're retired, aren't you? That kind of thing.
From all pleasures. Yeah. You're retired from pleasure, aren't you?
And that's a kind of a neat, such a neat relationship that the Mark Ruffalo character, Duncan, sort of rebels against it and literally, tries to throw Martha off the ship. Unsuccessfully, thank God. But and she doesn't really protest.
Pathetically and unsuccessfully.
Yeah. But yeah, no. So there are other women in this. It's funny to me. With the selling of the movie, the men sometimes get higher profile than.
You know what? I'm gonna go on a rant, Jim. A rant. I will now rant.
First of 2024.
What the hell? It's January 1st. I should enter the year on a rant. So I was at a friend's the other day, and there's this young man there, young filmmaker, actually, young Winnipeg filmmaker. And I, of course, am talking about Poor Things. It is the movie on my brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he, like I did when I was his age, I suspect you did as well. I mostly remember my own. I am the star in my movie, Jim, not you. But he starts rattling off the statistics and who stars, right? And he starts with Willem Dafoe and Mark Ruffalo. And I think he was about to talk about, is it Rami Youssef?
Rami Youssef, yeah.
Yeah, Rami. He's about to talk about Rami Youssef, Jim, and I cut him off there, and I'm like, the movie's about Emma Stone. She's literally on the poster. And then I kind of go on a tangent, because I don't think this is just marketing. If you go on to Netflix right now, you will see movies where the star, a woman, will be in the poster, and that's the key first marketing hook. And yet she may not get mentioned because there's only so much room on the Netflix little thing for 3 stars. And you might have to click into details. You might find that she's a supporting player as far as Netflix or Prime or, and that's not the marketers.
An Oscar category.
That's not just the marketers. That's a whole machine going, oh. And I know that's not what this movie's about. But I do think that we can kind of get caught up in that. And this movie does have this woman escaping these men. And again, I think that's important to acknowledge. It's an important part of the story. And that she has these relationships with women, but it's not a sexism defeated.
Yeah.
You do that so much better.
Or the Frozen, buddy at the end of the Breakfast Club.
Exactly.
Freeze frame, yeah.
Because, even by the end of the film, I'm not feeling... It's not like Polytechnic. Like, I'm feeling uncomfortable at stages in this movie. But not for necessarily the reasons one might think you would feel uncomfortable, like at a Polytechnic, which I did too. And that raises another question in my mind. I think I said to you before the movie, it's like, I know I'm going to be uncomfortable in this. What were your expectations? Before I get into what my expectations were and why I thought I was going to be uncomfortable, what were your expectations?
Well, I haven't watched, shame on me, I haven't watched as much Yorgos Lanthimos as I probably should have at this point. I've most recently seen The Favorite and quite enjoyed that. And it had the same tone, obviously, very sort of a matter of fact about sexuality. Very entertaining, very, very... I sort of wonder what Wes Anderson is thinking when he watches a Lanthimos movie, because they sort of are they both have their own way of doing a movie, making a movie that I don't think anybody else would ever be able to copy properly. But that also reminds me of a tweet that I saw this week. If you'll bear with me, it was, I think I'm just doing this off memory. Saltburn this, saltburn that. Why didn't anybody tell me not to go to Poor Things with my father? So
who said that?
I think I tweeted it to you about earlier in the week, but it was all, and there was no punctuation, so it was a little bit hard to read the first time. But obviously, this woman, and it was a woman, I think, putting it out, and says, "Why didn't you tell me not to go to this, not go to Poor Things with my father because there was so much sexuality?" I expected something to be fairly frank. Lanthimos has this ability. Sometimes when you get this sort of experimental, quirky, as some people might say, you run the risk of being inaccessible. Is like some sort of Bulgarian theater project from the 1960s that nobody can quite understand. But he's able to pull this stuff off, and to me anyway, still be accessible.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like they're doing weird for weird's sake. There's something going on here.
They're not experimenting with the nature of narrative.
Yeah,
there's a very clear beginning, middle, and end.
And he's telling a story, and he's telling it in his own way. And, even the trailer probably would not attract some people. But it sort of, it very much differentiates. It doesn't try to sell it to people. It doesn't try and trick them into the theater. It basically shows you what it is with the music and even the titles, the lettering and stuff. Everything about this is different. And So what did I expect? I expected something sort of frank, probably fairly. Emma Stone has her sort of two sides. She can do this stuff, or she can do sort of modern day American. But this is clearly in this other realm, and I just expected it to be kind of. I didn't expect it to be as funny as it was, because we were laughing out loud at different times
Lots.
at
And
the end.
other people in
Yeah.
the theater. Like it was a busy night at the movies.
Yeah, but not all at the same place. And I think it's that like it was almost one of those like, do I laugh here? That kind of thing. It's not like one of those Robert De Niro in Cape Fear things where you're just like smoking a cigar and laughing the whole thing. But
Well, and there
yeah,
were couples that I
yeah.
think would laugh at their own relationship because something happened that it's like, hey, I do that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but so I expected something frank, something a little bit off kilter, and just something kind of interesting. And Emma Stone, if you follow, we all follow how many different actors in the course of our movie watching, and you get a sense that somebody, like Emma Stone, has the ability to choose interesting projects on a fairly consistent basis. And I think she's right about there right now. I mean, for me, it was Jeff Bridges back in the 1990s. He like there's 6, 7, 8 movies in a row where he's just like, okay, I'll go on this ride, And I think she's sort of there now. She's doing really interesting things in both TV and movies. And so I expected to be sort of entertained. I expected some sort of award-worthy kind of performances in that is being released at the end of the year. Yeah, and I wasn't. I was surprised by how funny it was. Long story short.
I think for myself, Jim, I knew I'd be getting out of my comfort zone, especially about maybe not sexuality as much as about sex, like and just how I was worried it was going to be relentless.
Okay.
And maybe that's not maybe, that's one of my own hangups. Here, though, much like some of the body horror elements, I was surprised at how up for it I was. And I wonder if that's just the magic that these filmmakers in front of and behind the camera were able to make you comfortable while being uncomfortable. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I want to show you a quick little slideshow thingy. I don't know if you can see that on your screen now, Jim. This is I only caught the play. So the book she was reading there is, you can't see because our heads are in the way, folks, but it's Love and Friendship. And this is when she's made her first woman friend and a friend with her woman friend, Hannah Shagula's character, her companion, a guy that seems to be coded as gay. It's certainly the way I interpreted his character. But anyway, there's Love and Friendship. And of course, this is when Mr. Wedderburn, Duncan Wedderburn, the cad that she ran off with to explore her desire, is about to throw that book over the into the ocean. But there are, let's see if I can't.
Yeah, that came up.
And if you look at the costuming, I'm gonna tell you, it's like it. Yeah, I think my smart remark after the movie, Jim, was, well, except for this one where you've got her in front of a big dick, which I didn't catch the play until I saw this, I saw this still. But you look at her costuming, and it's all very, the best way I can describe it is, vaginal.
Oh. Holly
if-
Waddington is the costumer responsible.
and we'll end on. Let's end on that one or that one. This is of course, the poster image. But yeah, I think it's all her costumes are very vaginal. The big, the over the top huge shoulders, the folds, and always kind of coming to a point. Her hair, the eyebrows, everything is about. Yeah, come explore the depths within.
Yeah.
I think in our description I went, have we reached peak vagina with this film?
I saw that. The also on Twitter this week was an appreciation of the ending of North by Northwest, where Cary Grant goes to kiss the woman in it. Forgive me, I should probably look
Eva
that up.
St. Marie?
Eva St. Marie, yeah.
Or
and
Eva
then
Saint, whatever. Yeah, anyway, sorry.
There's a cut and it shows a
Eva
train
Marie
going.
Saint.
Eva Marie Saint, yes, that sounds better.
Yeah.
And there's a cut and it shows a train going directly into the tunnel with the end.
But to make whoopee.
This is that's sort of an old one, but this is something like Hitchcock got away with this one or something to that effect. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly vision here, and in a
unified vision, right?
Yeah.
The production design is very frilly and almost fluid.
Yeah.
And colorful, and it only changes color in a way as it matches her deeper understanding of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because
well, that's
it. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and one of the questions that I did have, and I have a theory here, is that a lot of this is filmed in black and white and color, and the color sort of comes later. And I was wondering about that going in. I sort of knew that it was. Having said that, they use all kinds of great Robbie. Sorry, I'm turning away from the screen. Robbie Ryan is the director of photography.
Yeah.
There's pinhole lenses, as I mentioned in our shorter video. There's fisheye lenses. There's those zooms, those crazy 70s zooms, those really super slow and long zooms into like somebody trying to figure something out that you see all the time in 1970s movies. If you watch TCM or anything like that, that guy deserves a big round of applause as well. But I was wondering what is the meaning of the black and white versus the color, and I think I settled on the fact that when she's younger, it's black and white. And I think and correct me if I'm wrong, the first time that it turns into color is when she goes away on that trip to Lisbon with our friend Duncan the Hulk Wedderburn.
Yeah, I agree, but I'd go even further. And it's funny, this is why I wanted to do this today, Jim.
Yeah.
Versus our other plan that I couldn't get my crap together for tonight. No. This is a movie that the more you think about it, the more you think, oh yeah, and oh yeah. And I wonder if that's why he did it. So I'm with you there, and I'm going to take it a step further.
Sure.
I think if you see the color arc, it's not just black and white, but that London is kind of dismal and gray. And even when we do get visions of outside, it doesn't have a lot of color in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, yeah, blam, like almost like a riot, but a tinted riot of color. And then it goes blue, and then it goes kind of almost like an orange. And then let me see if I can't, because most of this stuff actually does match almost, let's say, not the mood of her, but the mood of let's say the scene, that part of her life she's in. So let's go here. I think you can see that. That's where it's getting a little freaky on the
On the ship there?
on the ship
seas?
there.
Yeah.
Here near the end, where it's getting downright dangerous for her
Well,
with her body's husband.
yeah.
Because who
Yes.
the heck is a question? We'll put a pin in it for now. Who is Victoria?
Yeah.
Who is Victoria Blessingham? But where is no. Here, this is at the end. We see the garden. It's the first time we see it in a full, not a riot of color, Jim, but it's full, it's colorful, but it's, I'm going to say normal. Partly I've been trying to color grade my own footage of my gizmo I recently picked up. And you can go extremes, right? And I think most of the movie up to the very last scene is all extremes of tone fitting the part of life she's in.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at her, you know, when she's I'm sorry, Jim. I think this is just I love this whole part. This is, I think, she might even have the Communist Manifesto in her hands there, where she is, we are our own means of production.
Yes, which is said as a slight, over the shoulder. Shut up, we are our own means of production.
But he was just like bang
that was
on,
good,
and it fits thematically in the film, I think.
And the delivery is perfect, yeah.
Delivery is perfect, but it's more than a joke. It's the joke. Half the reason it lands is not just it's kind of good Marxism, but it's also goes with the overall theme of a movie of this woman going, my body, period. You know, it's just a great line.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get to the end where everything's unified. She has had her adventure, but she has achieved atonement with her father. Her father's apologized. She has accepted him. She has, the family has been made whole. And she's now in a new phase of her life, which if you look at her, let's go back to her uniform here. Where are we here? Nope. Yeah, here. This is the most, let's say, I don't want to say subdued. In a way, it's the most relaxed clothing she wears in the whole movie. And it's the biggest smile we see out of her. And you look at the color in that shot, in that still, it's the most normal we see. And it's sunny. And there's the sky that we can see in a couple of the wide shots is a regular blue sky. And I think that's the, let's say, Jim, the establishment of the new normal. She has returned. You know, if you look at that Dan Harmon story circle, there was her who had a need to, explore her desire. And when she comes home and she has reestablished herself and she defeats the big bad, she is now in a new normal, and it's colorful, but in a new way that isn't exaggerated or stylized.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, there's still the general, the goat.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's still in the world we've established. This isn't the world of, I think the book is more about an unreliable narrator, but in this, they've decided, nope, this is the world we're in. It's a magical realist world, and we're not going to play that game.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when you're comparing it with the place that she just came from, which is Blessington, her former husband's, or her current husband, I guess.
Her body's
that
former husband.
Her body. he's got an estate, and there's like everything around it is controlled, or there's nothing blooming. Like there's
or
nothing
even dead. Yeah.
or dead. You know, it's not a healthy yard, or it's not particularly. It might be landscape, but it's not.
Yeah.
There's nothing growing, and even earlier on, you know, in some of her walks,
And everyone's
with
behind
Max,
a fence, including her own poor, her husband's staff.
it's almost like the house radiates, you know, death or something to that effect. But even earlier on, like she's walking
house,
with Max,
it
and there's just
off.
yeah. But even earlier on, she's walking with Max. She hasn't established herself, and everything's growing. Like you can see the great, and the use of what they call, you know, bokeh and still photography, and have Max and just sort of a riot of trees and behind him that are not in focus. But you know, it's yeah. And so she gets to this place, and there's no growth whatsoever, and he turns out to be
the sun's very wan. Like you know, think of a winter sun.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, but the other thing I was going to say about
bright
black and
but
white,
not warm. Long shadows, not
like
warm.
a winter sun almost, much like what we're experiencing these days. But
or like what I just said.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. But the other thing about the black and white too is I was wondering if that's codified, because she's still a child when it's black and white. And so you have this weird idea of taking a baby's brain, inputting it into the head of an adult female, having it grow, you know, having the body and the brain get used to each other. And at what point does it, you know, there's a creepiness sort of built into that construction. And I think that black and white to color switch tells us she's an adult now. I'm asking this because I'm not entirely sure myself.
I think it
but I was sort of want work here.
Where bears rewatching. Like I feel good about my general arc idea. Like as each distinctive phase of her life has a palette. But I would like to watch it again. Or not like, I know I'm going to watch it again. This is a movie that's going to stick with me for a while. But I think that question can't be answered just from a memory of 4 or 5 days ago. We almost have to watch it again. This is something film study students will be, you know, talking about.
Parsing,
plate number.
Yeah, exactly.
Lanthimos, 2023.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
Some people even saw this in a theater.
Who do you think, this is one of my questions for you, who do you think Victoria was? Because we're presented with a couple of options. Who do you think she was?
Well, I think she would have been, you know, the mere fact that we should, you know, just for continuity's sake, explain, you know, she commits suicide and then the body's found and then used in this sort of Frankenstein-y kind of way. And was married to Blessington. In that she tried to escape this, I think there's similarities there between Victoria and Bella. Bella took a different route and was more sort of rebellious. I wonder if Victoria just wasn't at that rebellious stage yet.
Godwin let her go. It was McCandless who tried to stop her, but didn't seem to realize what, you know, chloroform seemed to be used a lot in that house, and she had experience.
That, I mean, after not letting her out of the house for the first, you know, part of her life, at all, like wouldn't let her sort of, you know, even when they were in the carriage, they brought down the curtains.
Yeah, keep going.
Go ahead.
Was,
Oh yeah, no. So it just like they didn't even want her to get a glimpse of the outside world, as if maybe it's tempting or corrupting
was
or
it
what
that,
have
or
you.
was it he didn't want her to be seen? Like, I think
Mhm.
Godwin's behavior
That
was
I think that's another
focused
aspect of it.
on
Yeah.
protection. Like you know what, when I made up my log line of this flick, I really did. I was like, yeah, Godwin's the overprotective father.
Mhm.
Father who, let the mother die and use the body for the daughter, which is so Freudian and Jungian.
Isn't there a joke in it where Max is saying, "Well, why would you do that?" And Godwin says, "Well, why not?" or something to that effect. It was natural. It was the natural next step. And Max kind of
Max
goes,
says,
"What?
no, it wasn't. What?
For who?" Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
back to how funny this was. Darkly funny,
Oh
but
yeah, very
not like
dark.
a dark comedy. This isn't a black
No.
comedy. I
Mm-mm.
think it actually has a lot of life. Yeah, it does end in a marriage.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and I think the Max character has a lot
a
because he's
polyandrous,
our stand-in.
relationship and a
Yeah.
marriage.
Yeah, Max is our stand-in, so he's able to have those kind of like reactions and kind of like go with it. What's going on? Wait, what? That kind of quality of
When he's
performance,
also
which I thought was great.
kind of like Godwin. Godwin learns,
Mhm.
grows, but McCandless is the one who gets to be the new man.
Mhm.
You
Yes,
know,
yeah.
yeah. While the seeds were planted early on, he had to grow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was interesting. See, that's one of the
So
the
let's
sort of
go
the
back though. I
marks.
want to come back to my question about who
Oh,
was
sure, yeah.
Victoria, because
Yeah.
Blessington is described, not that he's necessarily the most reliable narrator, but he
No.
did describe a woman. Oh, you love this. Let's do this. Where he teases and terrorizes one of the help,
Yeah, yeah.
and seems
Yeah.
honestly disappointed when Victoria, or when who he thinks is Victoria, which is Bella, is not amused.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think she had. I mean, we're taking it from him that she enjoyed it. It
Yeah,
could very well have been that
again,
she was just
is he
humoring him.
reliable?
Yeah, he's walking around the state with a gun and threatening people with it. He's pretty monstrous character. So,
Yeah.
and probably not super able to read the room, with any accuracy. But yeah, I think there was enough. It wasn't just out of spite, but she seemed genuinely. Uh, what little of we saw of Victoria beforehand, basically she's mostly jumping off a bridge and weeping. There's enough there. There's enough pushback against her husband there that she just can't take it, and perhaps she doesn't want to bring a child up in this world. I
Ah,
mean, that's she can sort of see where things are going. Maybe he thought that Blessington would be cruel to the child as well. But
mhm.
yeah, she doesn't envision any future, I think, for them. And yeah, there's enough of a rebel in her to want to get out of the situation rather than the option, which a lot of people have done and probably still do in their lives, just stay, just suck it up.
Yeah.
Just status quo, and it'll all be over in 60 years. So there was enough there for her to make a decision like that. And similarly, Bella tries to get out of her situation. So you
Yeah.
can say there's maybe a little bit of an influence there
Yeah.
that you may not be aware of.
I yeah, that's another question. I'll give you my answer to it
Sure.
after you get yours. Is there an influence between Victoria and Bella?
Uh, I mean, in a very shallow way, in that they both tried to break away from their situations, but it seemed, for all intents and purposes, that Victoria was going to be a wife and a mother, and a wife, a soldier's wife, basically.
A woman of her class
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
what
and falling into
she was
line and
told to
doing
do.
doing what was accepted of her. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I agree. I don't the connection I don't even see it as a connection that they both tried to escape their situation from Blessingham. This isn't so much,
Yeah.
this connection between the two as much as it's a coincidence or hey, two human beings trying to escape a terrible situation,
Mhm.
To survive or at least get away from an untenable situation. But that also, there's another image just before she escapes, and she kind of repeats, or in a way says, what she was all about. She sees what Blessingham's going to get the doctor to do, which is, amputate her clitoris. It's female
Yeah.
genital mutilation. Here we come.
Mhm.
And the device, although it behaves in a weird way like a sick cigar cutter, and I'm using that on purpose,
Yeah.
looks like a vagina with teeth that clamp down. And why do you think they went with that? Because that's a prop somebody made. And yes,
Yeah.
the vagina imagery is everywhere in this movie. I suspect if I watched it again, I'd also start to see the phallus imagery as well. But I think this is really important at that point. And then, of course, she says, because she's discovered what they plan to do for her, and she goes, yes, at times I wanted to rid myself of my questing nature. Like,
Oh, yeah.
she sees it as I gave myself, at times, she looks at that as her questing nature. But yeah, why did they choose that imagery? What do you think?
Well, it's not a it's not a very it's pretty brutal process, as much as I know about it, and it's in, the intent of it as well is brutal, and I think, you mentioned elements of body horror there, and I think in body horror there is mutilation, and that's, form of mutilation, basically.
But that's not like, why does the device look the way it does?
Yeah, I just to inform how brutal it is. I think I don't have anything more profound than that. It's yeah, not a, and keeping in mind is that this movie is full of medical imagery too, and none of it's pretty subtle. If anybody's watched The Nick, which is about the series of the Soderbergh series about the hospital in New York in the 1900. Yeah, it's got a lot of sort of stuff like that. Almost every procedure is brutal, but I think maybe they wanted to sort of have this one, in particularly visually rise up out of that.
You know what, Jim? I have a theory.
Oh, do you?
Yes. I know you're shocked. Oh my goodness. The first thing I thought of was vagina dentata. And we've seen a couple of horror movies about it, which always seemed kind of borderline offensive. Not big on horror anyway, and it's just ridiculous. But in this movie, that choice to have this thing that's like a cigar cutter, which is also, a cigar is sometimes just a cigar and sometimes it's a symbol for a penis.
Mm.
And here's something that's going to cut it. And here's this vagina that's got teeth that could cut things. And all I can think of is this, it just goes kind of back to that theme of not just men trying to control her desire, it's that men are afraid of her desire. That this weird kind of, because I think actually vagina dentata is one of those BS. I don't think it's in the diagnostic and statistics manual, but one of those BS kind of, oh, this is a phobia some men have and women do too. And it's like, well, how many guys did it take before they had to push that in the poor woman's brain? You know, like it's one of those things that just seems like such a reverse, such a projection of a male fear.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and again, very Freudian or Jungian, that kind of, that era of psychoanalysis.
Yes.
Which film, especially European filmmakers, but film seems so lend itself well to that kind of worldview. And that was my thinking of that female genital mutilation device. You know, that it's this weird projection of every guy's fears, not every man's fears, of the men in this film, the men, and not all of the men in this film, but definitely Blessingham, definitely the doctor, and even Wedderburn. You know, who becomes both obsessed and afraid of the woman who goes, I am the means of my own production.
Well, yeah, and he's the one that got the ball rolling and he lost control of it. Yeah.
Well, and he is definitely the trigger for her, but it's funny, and I think that's why she, you know, he's like, I'm just going to ditch you. And it's only when he realizes I never had control of this woman. He didn't lose it. He didn't have it to begin with.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Well, he was the spark. You know, he sort of started, he made things possible, and
the inciting incident.
Yes, exactly. And then just, you know,
and
just sort of
sexual assault.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Yorgos.
Would be interesting on paper. So then,
Jim, I think we're moving into final thoughts here.
Sure.
What anything you want to add to what we've already talked about?
You know, I think we've covered most of it. There's a lot of, like, there's so much work that went into this, whether it's the costumes, again, Holly Waddington, the photography, everyone seemed to go over and above. The special effects, there's a bunch of hybrid animals that are crawling all over the screen at any given time. That's kind of an interesting thing. It's not played up as
an idea that we didn't even explore.
Yeah,
it's all the hybrid, like this island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah, like, you know, pig head on a chicken body and that kind of thing. And that's that's not even, and it's not played as a tiring joke either. It's just their extras, basically, you know, their background, what do they call it? Atmosphere players or what have you. But so the director of photography, Robbie Ryan, I think, did a great job. Holly Waddington. And then Jerskin Fendrix is the actual name or the stage name of the person who did the music. And score was amazing. So, you know, those, and just so much in this. Emma Stone is great. And I think as a physical comedian, this is sort of a strange mix of, like, I don't know, Lucille Ball and Frankenstein and all kinds of different things going on here. She has a different look, even like the hair and makeup people made her look quite different. And, you know, you have to hand it to, like, Willem Dafoe is still, you know, I mentioned earlier about those interesting roles that people take. He's still, like, picking up. He's not just you know, I remember seeing To Live and Die in LA all those years ago. And that was sort of one of the first things that brought him to our attention, and man, he's still just delivering. And I thought he was awesome. But yeah, the whole cast does a great job. But yeah, just a really quality movie. Like everyone's just sort of seems to be dialed in. I wouldn't be surprised if this does really well, but I don't need it to do well to tell me it's a good movie.
Yeah.
You know, in award season. So, but yeah,
Well, I think it's
just an appreciation, anyways.
yeah. I agree with you, and on the whole award season thing, yeah, I doubly agree with you. They're all ridiculous anyway. I think this is a movie not that just I will remember, but will be remembered. I mean, that's a pretty bold claim. Who knows, 5 years from now, it's like, oh, that was the American Beauty of its time. Nobody cares anymore.
Yeah.
I do want to shout, I want to quickly just kind of bounce on some of the other cast we didn't talk about, including the Harry Astley character that played by Jared Carmichael. He coded as gay. There was another male character trying to control her, and this time just by showing her the world's horrors.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also the first man who apologizes to her.
Oh yeah.
For trying to do that. Some of the women, we already talked about Hannah Shigula, Margaret Qualley, who has an interesting role here. You could call it a bit part. I don't think it is. Susie Bemba as her female lover, Toinette. And Catherine Hunter as Madame Swiney.
Yeah. Who's quite a performer in her own. Like she's done all kinds of stage stuff.
And Vicky Pepperdine as Mrs. Prim. Yeah, all these players, Jim, A-list supporters giving A-list supporting performances. You know, every one of them. I think I could come back. We did not talk about this idea of hybridizing and this weird kind of body mixing and that. We touched on it, but I think we could almost spend another hour on that alone. I just, at the end of it though, here we are. What is the question I asked? What is her desire? What is the nature of her quest? What is her quest?
Yeah. I'm going to say that the shot that you used to promote not the movie poster, but the shot of her in the turtleneck at the end is sort of like almost like a moment of victory. She's surrounded by, she knows who she is. She knows where she wants to go, and she's surrounded by people she loves. And, she's actually gotten on with a couple of them as well, men and women. And I think, is that family? Is it accomplishment? But that pose, it's almost like Homer in his hammock, in a way. Like it's like she's got a book in her hand, a drink in in her other hand, and
loved ones around her.
Yeah, and I think part of that is she knows who she is, she knows where she's headed. She wants to become a doctor herself, and I think that where she ends up in that still, I think that's probably goes enough to describe her, or more to describe her quest than I could sum up in a sentence. Just that sort of that pose, that satisfaction that she has, not smugness, but that she seems satisfied at the end. And I think that's sort of and she's come home, right? She's gone on her journey and come all the way back to London, and it's a different London that she's gotten to, and she's different. And I think she knows where she's headed anyway. And I think that's sort of what she was aiming for. Well, a sense of self, that kind of thing. But
for me, I think her questing desire is to experience all her desires. You know, it starts out with her physical desire for sex, but also autonomy and the full range of, human experience, even seeing suffering, to be challenged, to have friendship, not just love, not just sex, but love. And those things can be separate. And friendship that doesn't involve sex, family, atonement. It's interesting. Usually there's a return, and I'm not talking about a prodigal son, a return though of a child who's now become a woman, a man, usually involves some kind of, hey, I'm sorry, old man, I knew you always loved me. Here, there is none of that. And I think that is part of her becoming fully a woman, understanding that in this case, she doesn't owe Godwin an apology, but she does feel love for him anyway, and she acknowledges contradiction. That she is able to negotiate everything, including her marriage to McCandless, as a complete equal, in saying, hey, are you down with this? And that's also where McCandless is like, hey, whoa, doesn't bug me. We're all good. And she's like, yeah, I can work with this. Yeah. I'm with you. You see that image, you see that final scene. This is a woman who has found out what her desire is and has satisfied some of them and has others she knows how to satisfy. So if I was to give it an answer, Jim, maybe it's this is a woman who has found out what she needs to do to fulfill her desires. And that she can, and that she has the agency to do so. And yeah, it's why it ends, for all the weirdness, it ends on a great note. You come out of the theater, unlike other movies that we've seen this year, you come out of the theater, you end the movie, and you're going, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling good about life.
Yeah.
You're right. McCandless, as best as he is, he's the stand-in for the audience. And as a guy watching the movie, it's like, oh, we're not, hey, look, we're not all assholes.
Yeah.
Yay for us. Yeah.
A sympathetic man.
Well, exactly. Not that I felt like we've seen some other movies where none of us are coming out good. And it's like, I'm okay with that. Should we? Should we? Yeah. But here it is kind of, and he has to grow into that. He is a callow youth at the beginning. He becomes a man worthy of being married. He has learned and grown over his time with Godwin and, poor Margaret, Felicity, poor Margaret Qualley's character,
It was growing, but it's
without love, can you really grow?
Yes. Yeah.
I think this is but I could. I'm looking forward to when this is coming out on streaming, because I think it'll be a great streamer, and watching it again to peel back to see the layers I'm not seeing right now.
Yeah, I got to hit up some of his other movies, see what's going on there too.
Yeah.
So, and it should be said that a couple of these people are going to be in Lanthimos' next movie, including Margaret Qualley. So, which apparently is an anthology of some sort. But yeah.
Cool.
Cool chapter titles too. I forgot to mention that is right in my notes. Just the little London, Paris, the little and a great credit sequence. He does it on a square at the very end, which is I don't think I've seen before. But yeah, lots of neat stuff you've really not seen too often before in this movie, which is a good sign, I think, sometimes.
Well, that's a great note. We're on the on the credit sequence, folks. Down below, you can subscribe. Of course, give us a thumbs up. And over this way, there's some stuff YouTube would love you to watch. Thanks, everyone, for coming out.